Alright. In my previous episode, we demystified the Model Context Protocol, or the MCP. We have explored how and why MCP was created, why it matters, and how Salesforce is embracing the hosted MCP servers to bring enterprise-grade trust, governance, and consistency to our AI agents such as Cloud Code, Curse AI, and Agentforce Vibes. And today, we are taking it one step further. We will explore how Agentforce can act as an MCP client. The exciting news is that the MCP client support is now generally available, officially reaching the full GA status on 9th of June. That means we can start taking the advantage of all the capabilities of MCP that brings to the Agentforce ecosystem. And in this episode, we will cover how to register an MCP server in the Agentforce registry, how to review and manage MCP tool actions within the Agentforce assets, and how to add MCP tool actions into your agents. And as a bonus topic, I will show you how to connect VS Code to the GitHub MCP server and use your natural language to perform an entire Git workflow from creating a feature branch to committing code and pushing changes and raising a pull request in a single instruction rather than executing multiple Git CLI commands. So without further ado, let's get started. And for today's demo, we will use a free public MCP server from the MCP servers directory. And here in this website, on the MCP remote servers, we will be using the Yahoo Finance MCP server. And the MCP server exposes financial related tools, including the ability to retrieve current stock market information. On the server listing page, you will find the remote MCP server URL. And we will be needing this endpoint shortly when we register the server within the Agentforce. Before integrating it with Salesforce, it's always a good idea to validate the MCP endpoint. For that, I'll be using this online MCP testing tool. Simply copy the MCP endpoint URL into the test remote server URL, and let's click on connect to server. Since this endpoint doesn't require authentication, we can leave the authentication setting to blank. Once connected, we will see the list of available MCP tools. For today's use case, let's select the Get Quote tool and provide the CRM as the stock symbol, which represents Salesforce on the stock market. Let's click on Run Tool. After running the test, you will receive the current stock information in a JSON payload. This quick validation gives us the confidence that the MCP server is working as expected. Now let's bring it into Agentforce. So before we jump into the configuration, let's understand the architecture at a high level. The process is very straightforward. The administrators register the MCP servers at the organization level through Agentforce Registry. Then the builders select the approved MCP tools and add them to the MCP actions through Agent Builder Asset Library. And thirdly, the agents gain access to those tools at runtime and can invoke them as needed. And an important disclaimer, at the time of the recording of this episode, the MCP is only supported on Atlas or the DC++ planner, and it is not supported on the legacy builder planner. And if you are building agents using next generation authoring or the NGA, together with DC planner, the MCP actions should be available to use. Some community members have experimented with forcing the legacy planner types through SOCL and CLI updates to the Atlas concurrent multiple agent orchestration for the legacy builders. But however, this approach isn't officially supported and results may vary for the agents with legacy builders. Alright, now let's register the Yahoo Finance MCP server. Let's first copy the MCP server URL. Let's go to Salesforce, click on Setup, and let's search for Agentforce Registry and MCP servers. Let's click on New and register for an MCP server, and let's complete all the required fields. MCP server name, let's call it as Yahoo Finance, some description, the server URL which we just copied, and no authentication is required, so let's call it as no authentication and click on create and continue. So I've already set up the Yahoo Finance MCP connection. At this point, Salesforce establishes a connection with the MCP server and sends a validation ping to verify the connectivity. Once the connection is successful, Salesforce automatically creates several supporting components behind the scenes.
a name credential, an external credential, and a permission set, which also automatically assigns to you. Because our Yahoo Finance MCP server endpoint doesn't require authentication, the external credential is configured with no authentication. After the connection is established, you will be prompted to select the MCP tools you want to expose to the Agentforce. Let's click on Tools tab, and here you will see by clicking Manage Tools, you will see all the available tools, and in our example, we will be using the get code. So I have been already added get code as a tool. So once you click on Save, Salesforce automatically publishes those tools into the Agentforce asset library as an MCP action. To review the available MCP actions, let's now go to Setup and navigate to Agentforce Assets. And then let's move on to the Actions tab and let's search for the newly created MCP action. As you see here, the tool and the MCP is being already selected. And now these actions are available for the builder to add these to the agent. Alright, now let's add the MCP action to an Agentforce agent. From the app launcher, let's search for Agentforce Studio and open your agent to use on the MCP Server tool in the builder. Inside the sub-agent, open the Actions tab and click on Add from Asset Library, and let's search for our Git code Yahoo Finance. Click Select, Add to Agent. And also here, let's add action part of the instruction and click on Save. And before activating your agent, thoroughly test the behavior to ensure the MCP action is being invoked correctly and returning the expected results. So refine the instructions as necessary based on your testing outcomes. So let's get this tested. Let's go into the preview and let's put our utterance. What is the current stock price of CRM? And here, Agentforce will invoke the MCP action as part of the stock information retrieval and provides the current pricing. To point out another disclaimer in regards to MCP tracing, at the time of recording of this episode, there is a known issue affecting NGA with MCP actions. Even when using the DAISY planner, the MCP actions invoked by the sub-agents may not appear in the agent trace logs, despite having the correct permissions configured. But the good news is that the functionality itself still works. The issue is limited to observability and tracing. And that's it. Adding an MCP-powered capability to an Agentforce sub-agent is surprisingly simple. You can also leverage the verified third-party MCP servers available through AppExchange. And if you need to expose existing APIs, legacy systems, or databases through MCP, you can leverage MuleSoft's Agent Fabric, which provides a powerful way to wrap those assets into MCP-compatible endpoints so that the Agentforce can consume just like any other MCP servers. For the final demo, let's connect VS Code to the GitHub MCP server as I promised in the episode introduction. And we will return to the MCP server directory, the remote MCP server website. Let's look for GitHub. And here, because I use VS Code as my IDE, so either you can click on install or copy the configuration into VS Code. So let's now jump into VS Code. And once you copy the configuration, let's look at the listed MCP servers. So I've already copied the GitHub configuration. Let's look at the configuration quickly. This is the exact configuration we saw from the website, and the job is, or the MCP server is running. And on the sidebar, you also see all the metadata that I've imported or pulled into my VS Code project. Basically the authoring bundle, the Agentforce script, the external credentials, the GenAI planner bundle, the name credentials, permission sets, etc. As you see, there are 16 pending metadata to be committed and pushed against the GitHub repository. So the idea here is, instead of me manually executing multiple Git commands, now we can simply describe our intent in natural language instruction. Let's now go into the VS Code chat window. So let's copy the intent. So here I want to create a new feature branch named MCP for Agentforce. From the main branch, I want to add and commit all the pending metadata changes using this commit message. And I also want to push these changes to the remote repository and start creating a pull request targeted to the main branch and assign me as a pull request reviewer. Let's execute this. So now this command or the simple instruction will use the MCP enabled IDE, which can orchestrate the entire workflow from branch creation to committing the message, pushing the metadata to the remote repository, and creating that pull request. So let's wait for the changes to be pushed. So now you notice all the metadata, pending metadata has been committed. Now it has successfully pushed to the remote branch. Now it has also raised the pull request as requested. And now it's adding Tuan Abdin, which is me as a reviewer, to the newly created pull request. So all the actions being completed. Let's now jump onto my Git repository. Now you have noticed there's a new pull request. The branch is being created and there's a pending pull request being added. So let me quickly review, and you can do the typical metadata review and start merging into the main branch. And that's a wrap. And that's all for today. And that is the power of MCPs. We have used an MCP as a client as part of our MCP action in our Agentforce. In our example, it was Yahoo Finance to get the current stock market price for a given stock symbol. And we have also, as a bonus topic, we have also used GitHub MCP in VS Code so that we can, with a simple intent, we can execute a lot of Git commands rather than executing them in manually. And that's it. And thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next episode. Ciao.